What's going on, guys? Bruce here, and welcome back to the channel.
Holy shit! Oh my.
What is up, guys, and welcome back to the channel. So there's a couple things I've been looking at on the internet, following a couple YouTubers here closely lately, and some of them are giving some not very, their information there, I see they're trying to make a good point. They're not exactly giving you the best information you need for your diesel engine and exhaust gas temp, things like that, that lead you to where you should put, like, for example, your exhaust probe, what causes exhaust gas temp to get higher than it should, and where you want it to be. So let me start off with where you should place your EGT probe in your exhaust manifold. You do not want to place your EGT probe anywhere from the center of the engine forward. You want to focus on your back 3 cylinders. That is where the most heat happens in a Cummins diesel engine. Exactly why whenever you get a 3-piece manifold, or really any aftermarket manifold, the EGT probe is already drilled on the back 3 cylinders, which is where the exhaust gas collects on the back port here, as you can see. Well, with the light you can't really see it, but just to give you an idea of what happens whenever you introduce too much exhaust gas temp to your engine. I've got some pistons out of my race motor from this year. So this one right here was actually a few videos back when I first started, where we had the nitrous versus piston video. That was like one of my first videos I ever started with YouTubing. This one, the top ringland broke on a stock setup. We didn't plan on putting nitrous to the engine, and actually did, and you can see where it actually ended up sticking to the piston and creating all kinds of damage. This was in the number 6 slot, so it's where the most amount of heat is in the back of the engine with the stock intake. So the top ringland broke and actually went through the engine and did some damage to the turbo. So that's where too much exhaust temp happens. And you know, this is another perfect example. You can barely tell right here, but you can see where the edges of this piston bowl are rounded from, another thing, too much exhaust gas temperature and a lot of nitrous, like a lot. Along with this one also, you can see where the top ringland broke from too much nitrous and very high exhaust gas temperature, along with a lot of nitrous. And along with a lot of exhaust temp, you have overspeeding your turbo, spinning your turbo too fast. So when you spin your turbo too fast out of its limits that it's designed for, like Borg Warner has, this is when you start getting into play with exhaust back pressure, drive pressure, all these cool things with, you know, this is when you start getting high performance. Most of this you don't have to worry about with your stock truck, that you put a little bit bigger set of injectors in, things like that. But when you start really wanting to make power, I'd say 600 horsepower or more, you've got to start looking at these things. So one of my videos where I blew up the turbo, as you see right here, when I got engaged, I overspun this turbo. That is why it blew up. I was at the end of the track doing right around 150 miles per hour in the quarter mile, and I overspun it with too much drive pressure. Basically, there was too much nitrous flowing through the engine, creating a lot, like a massive amount of exhaust drive pressure, which is the exhaust coming out of the engine flowing into the turbo. So it was spinning that turbo way too fast. There's a point when you have too much boost pressure and not enough boost pressure. So when you have too much drive pressure, it creates so much boost pressure you're not actually using it. It's turning into from usable air to hot air, and that's what happened here. And as you can see, the front compressor wheel is also destroyed, and the inside of the turbo is destroyed. The biggest reason that these engines have problems on cylinders 3, 4, 5, and 6, mostly 4, 5, and 6, is the intake on a 12. Well, intake on a 24 valve starts right about here on a second gen. The 12 valve is further back, but when you go back to a common rail, it moves back further forward. So that's when you start having all these exhaust gas temp issues on cylinders 4, 5, and 6, sometimes on 3, because the boost pressure has a really hard time reaching all the way back to the back of the cylinder head just to get to this number 6 cylinder, because there's so much, literally the amount of heat that is acquired in the air just from that short distance is a major difference. And then it has to come all the way into the engine, all the way back out to this manifold. That's where all the heat happens. So that is why you should always put your exhaust gas temperature sensor as close to the back cylinder as possible, because it will always be the hottest. We know that number 6 will be the hottest of all the time while you're driving, no matter what you're doing. So in reality, you would want it back here as far back as possible, but it's a safer spot right here. So 1, 2, and 3 usually don't really matter, because they're not going to get as hot as number 6, and you want to worry about your hottest cylinder. It is proven that number 6 is hotter. When I used to sled pull, we had exhaust temperature sensors on every single cylinder to see which one was outperforming the other, or to see which one had an issue, just for data logging. So after every run, we could see whenever one would mess up, so that after every pass down the sled pulling track, we could see if there was a difference between the pass before and the current pass we made, see if there's an issue with the engine or if we hurt the engine before the next pass, if we need to make a repair or something like that. I've had a lot of my subscribers asking about these types of things and what to worry about on a Cummins engine when you start doing high performance modifications to them, and the things you have to do to prevent failures. The number one thing I would recommend, nitrous does help in small amounts for controlling exhaust temp. Water meth helps a little bit. The real problem you need to start looking at is if you're running a big single turbo and a lot of fuel, you'll have to bring in either a better intercooler or a better intake system. That's why you see a lot of high performance engines, the factory intake is cut off so that we can better direct the flow to the entire head, and also so you can port the head. That's almost the number one reason why they cut the intakes off. So we put nitrous on stuff to make a lot more power. It's instant power to spool the turbo, to burn all the fuel off. Too much fuel is bad, but sometimes you see, well, most of the time, whenever you see a lot of fuel in sled pulling trucks, drag trucks, things like that, we throw a piss load more fuel at engines just to keep them cool. I know that sounds like some reverse psychology stuff, but it's true. Whenever you overfuel an engine, you can actually put the fire out inside the combustion chamber, whatever you want to call it, and that will actually bring exhaust temperature down. But there's a point when there's too much fuel to where your engine will lose power, and too much fuel to where you're creating too much heat. So you got to find that happy medium, when it's very, very hard to do. That's why you see a lot of sled pullers running ice to air intercoolers, where you literally have freezing cold water flowing through your intercooler to cool it down. Exhaust gas temp. Okay, so you're probably wondering what temperature is safe to cruise at, what temp is. It's really hard to say depending on your setup. So when you're racing, we see anywhere from 1800 degrees to over 2000 degrees going down the track at the end of the track. Yes, that's a lot, and you do risk melting pistons, but it's usually only for 2 to 3 seconds. So that's 9 times out of 10 not enough time to actually melt a piston or hurt a piston, but sometimes it is. That's why the biggest reason next year we're going to a forged piston. It's a lot harder style aluminum. It's better. Well, no, we're actually going to a billet piston. I don't know, whatever D&J's putting in my motor. But anyways, they're a lot stronger material, so they don't just melt like the cast pistons do that we blew up in the drag truck this year. But your factory pistons in your factory Cummins engine, or really any diesel engine, are made from cast aluminum, and they melt very easily. It doesn't take much to melt them. So cruising down the road with your modified diesel truck, you know, romp on it real hard, you will see 1700 degrees. Is it bad? Yes and no. You can go at that temp for, 10 to 15 seconds goofing off. I wouldn't go any further down, for any further past that. Racing down the interstate doing over 120 miles an hour with that kind of temperature is not a good idea. I wouldn't go any longer than 15 seconds on something like that. Cruising down the road, you shouldn't be going that fast anyways in your diesel truck. It's not made for it, especially if you're not at a drag strip or something like that. But you will see usually, and even in the flatbed, we see right around 2000 degrees if you're on it really, really hard for a long time. The nitrous actually brings the temp down, so that does help a lot. So that's my little input on exhaust gas temperature. If you have any questions on things like that, don't hesitate to ask me like always. Make sure you guys go to my Instagram, follow that, check that out, and add me on Snapchat. We do so many things in between filming on Snapchat, the funny moments, the bloopers on the channel here at the shop. Ray goofing off, cleaning the toilets and stuff like that. You don't want to miss that. And make sure you go to dieselgang.com, www.dieselgang.com. Link in description, link in bio, whatever we're going to call it, and check out the new Diesel Gang. And check out the new Diesel Gang keychains, key tags. I know Street Speed 717, a lot of those guys have them. Well, we've got our own. Check them out. We're rocking them on all of our keys. They're really easy to grab. It's just high quality stuff. I know Cletus has them on his stuff too. And make sure you tune in tomorrow, guys. Cletus is coming over to the shop tomorrow. We're putting a transmission in his truck. Suncoast sent over a little bit different style trans they want us to try out. Since he decided not to go with twin turbos and a couple other things that we thought he might have done, they put a comp transmission in his truck preparing for that, and he's not going to do that anymore. So now we're doing a towing. Now we're doing an Omega Junior tow style transmission just to kind of back down those shift points. They're a little bit too firm for what he likes for just cruising and towing his trailer. So we're going to swap it up and see what he likes and go from there. Make sure you hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't. If you like these tutorial videos, just with a jam-packed full of information, I know kind of back down talking a lot on this one, but it's good information that you want to stock up on and know and memorize. So make sure you hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't, and leave a comment down below. We'll catch you in the next upload.